All right, so thanks for tuning in to Chomping at the Bit. I'm Kyle Edwards, of course, and this is episode number 95 of, Chomping at the Bit. So, I'm sure most of you know that it is NFL Draft Week, as the NFL Draft will be held in Cleveland, Ohio, on Thursday. Well, Thursday night is round one. Friday night, they're going to do rounds 2 and 3. And then Saturday, they do 4, 5, 6, and 7. I know for some of you, might be around my age, you can remember back to when the draft was, I believe it was Saturday and Sunday. And it was like all day, each day affair. And you were just sitting there just watching, the first round guys would usually show up, but then after that, you're just watching names popping up on your screen and analysts talking about it. They've gone to the 3-day set now, so that way they can do, the first round in prime time. I believe they do rounds 2 and 3 in prime time as well, and then the third day they start a little earlier because there's 4 rounds to get through. Now, last year's draft, they did do it virtually. As we all know, with the pandemic, didn't allow for them to, have large crowds and all that. This year, they are going to have people there. They've invited, I believe it's 13 prospects to be at the draft. So, should be exciting. If you're an NFL fan, you know that Cleveland fans are pretty passionate when it comes to their Browns. So you can expect to hear big reactions for Browns picks. You'll probably hear booing for the Ravens and the Steelers and Bengals picks as well. So it should be a nice event. And I do think that this draft is going to be maybe one that's remembered for years to come, only because there's so much uncertainty around the top of the draft. Not so much with the first 2 picks, but after that, there's so many different ways this draft could go, and I do think that's going to make it more enjoyable to watch, because I'm sure you'll see trades happen. You'll see guys probably get drafted a little higher than a lot of the analysts may think. Some teams may draft guys that you maybe have never heard of. And I think that's kind of the entertainment factor of the draft, which is just watching, depending on what network you watch, because the draft is covered on, it was NFL Network, of course. I want to say ABC, ESPN. That might be it. Plus, whatever your local team is, most likely they have a channel dedicated to the draft as well. So, I mean, based off of those channels, you could have as many as like 10 draft experts up there, and I mean, they may sound like they know what they're talking about sometimes, and other times they'll seem like they have no idea about what's going on. So, say all that to say that the NFL Draft is definitely one of the events on the sports calendar that I definitely look to, and because of that, I'm going to dedicate this week of episodes to the NFL Draft. So starting with this one, I'm going to talk about the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to do it from the aspect of the first round, because like I said, it's broken up: first round, then second and third round, 4, 5, 6, 7. So outline it for you; it'll make more sense. So offensive side of the ball for the first round this episode. Next episode will be the defensive side of the ball, first round, and just naming some of the guys that you'll hear. And well, offensive for this episode, we'll look at it more as the consensus is there's 5 top quarterbacks who will go in the first round. So I'll talk about those, give you my ranking 1 to 5, who I think best to, I guess, worst prospect. Also look at the wide receiver position, because there's like 3-4 guys who will probably go in the first round. Rank those as well. And then answer the question of whether or not a running back will get drafted in the first round. Because, recent years, running back has been a position that's been, I don't want to say devalued, because of course you need to have a good running back on your team for a balanced attack offensively. But I guess I could say it's been diminished to the point where you have teams that are successful getting running backs late rounds. You've had some successful teams with running backs in the first round or second round. So talk about that. Offensive linemen, I'll name a couple of them. Not really a position that I know. I know what they do, but in terms of like the intricate details about their skill sets, I'm not, I guess not good at that. So, but I will mention something to give them some respect. Next episode, like I said, defensive, same thing. I think this year is going to be offense heavy in the first round. So we will talk about some defensive guys who names you'll hear in the first round and what kind of impact they can have at the next level. That will lead us up to right before round 1. I will do a round 1 mock draft. And then after the draft, we'll see how well I did, as well as get you ready for round 2 and 3, where I'm not going to do a mock draft for 2 and 3. That'd take too long. But look at some names that will be sprinkled in there that I think will be able to make some impact in the NFL. Maybe a few of them that could become stars. And then we'll look at 4 through 7. I guess historically, finding superstar or star talent in those rounds. You do see that, at least one a year. Not just one, like a couple a year you'll hear from for a while, but we'll take a look at that as well. And then I guess to end draft week, we'll take an episode to look at my reaction to the draft, which teams I will think did well, as well as those who may have missed the mark. And then finally, while looking at the newest players into the league, I'll wrap up draft week with looking at recently retired guys and I guess Hall of Fame worthiness and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, good week of NFL talk. So, football fans out there, definitely let me know who your team is and all that. But before I get into it, I do want to give a shout out to Castbox, as I found out that the podcast Chomping at the Bit is now available on Castbox. So if you're listening to this from Castbox, I want to welcome you to the show. Hope you enjoy it. You can, hit follow, subscribe, wherever the option is on Castbox. And that way you can, stay involved and get notified when I do release new episodes. But get into more of that in the end. So, like I said, this episode we're going to do offensive players. And we know offense is the more, glamorous side of the ball. And quarterback is the most important position. So we'll go ahead and start with that. Now, as I said at the top of the show, consensus is that there's a big 5. The 5 guys who definitely will be within the first round. And I mean, this is no order, but you have Trevor Lawrence. You have Justin Fields. Well, Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. Justin Fields from Ohio State. You have Zach Wilson from BYU. Trey Lance from North Dakota State. And Mac Jones from Alabama. So, like I said, most people feel like those 5, their name will be called some point in the first round. A lot of people think you may hear all 5 of them by the first 10 picks. I think there's a couple of mock draft guys out there who think they could literally be the first 5 picks in the draft. Now, I think that's a little outrageous, but I get what they're saying. So, looking at the 5 of them, there are some things that we know already. We know Trevor Lawrence is going to be the number 1 pick. No shocker there. Jacksonville's going to take him. They have a new coach, Urban Meyer. So, first-year coach, get your star quarterback. You build from there. Like I said, Trevor Lawrence was pretty much deemed the number 1 quarterback from the time he set foot on Clemson's field as a starting quarterback. And through his play, he did nothing to, diminish that ranking that was put upon him. So if you watch him at Clemson, you see he can make pretty much all the throws. He's got good mobility. He shows he can win, which is what he did at Clemson. Now, of course, when he goes to Jacksonville, he's not going to have the kind of, talent gap that he did at Clemson. But hopefully Urban Meyer can kind of bring his winning ways to a team that kind of gone through it. When they first were involved in the league, of course, as many expansion teams do, struggled for a little bit, but then they got Mark Brunell. They kind of hit a nice upward trajectory, which led to them, I believe, making AFC title game or 2 in the 90s. If I remember correctly, I believe they lost. I think they lost on like the 96 year when the Patriots lost to the Packers in the Super Bowl. I believe they beat the Jaguars to get there. And I want to say some year they lost to like Denver or something. But then after that, they kind of hit a low point where really struggled, and middle of the road type team. Then it was a few years ago where they made another AFC title game, and they had Blake Bortles, they had like Miles Jack on the defense, LeGarrette Blount. I mean, not LeGarrette Blount. Leonard Fournette. Sorry, wrong running back. But they had some young guys there, and some people thought that they were going to be the team of the future. Well, that lasted literally for that year, because after that, they dipped right back down towards the bottom of the AFC. And now, with Urban Meyer there, Trevor Lawrence coming in, there's some optimism down there. And like I said, for Urban Meyer, this is something he's done where he's gone to programs, only in college, and turned them around. He did it at Bowling Green, Utah. I went to Florida at a time when Florida was not meeting expectations, and they brought him in to bring it back up to prominence, and he did that. So we'll see. Oh, then he had to stop at Ohio State as well. So we'll see if he can get a turnaround. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence will be the number 1 pick, and they can't go wrong for that. Now, the next question is at number 2, where we already know that the Jets are going to take a quarterback because they moved on from Sam Darnold, so they don't really have a starting quarterback on the roster right now. And going into, last season college football, I think the consensus was that Justin Fields was going to be the number 2 guy. But now there's some questions, and with Trevor Lawrence being clearly number one, 2 through 5 have been up for debate. Most notably, it's been kind of between Fields and Wilson. And it seems like Wilson is kind of eked ahead of Fields. Now, for me personally, I am a big fan of Justin Fields. I saw him play a lot at Ohio State. He played against pretty good competition because the Big Ten, pretty decent football conference where, he's going up against Michigan with Harbaugh and, that team there. You have Michigan State, which is usually a tough team to go against. Wisconsin's a grit, grind, tough team. And recently, Indiana's been kind of on the come up. You have Northwestern, which is kind of the team that has been forgotten for its recent success, but it's really turned their program around. And Justin Fields has had a pretty good career. Well, he had a pretty good career up there against those teams. And I feel like with Justin Fields, he reminds me a lot of, I would say, if everything goes right for him and he maximizes his potential, I could see a Donovan McNabb type guy once he gets it all together. And if he were to be the second quarterback off the board and go to like the Jets being an organization that's had a lot of down years recently, that's definitely something they could build on. So like I said, Justin Fields would be my number 2. I have a feeling it's going to be Zach Wilson, who I would have put number 3 on my ranking. And the only thing about Zach Wilson, which is why I knocked him down to 3, is because being at BYU, I recognize his talent. He's more of the new age quarterback where he scrambles a lot, can make throws from different arm angles. When he scrambles, whether he goes to his left or his right, he can push the ball downfield. If nothing's open, he can take off and gain chunks of yards because he is that athletic. Only thing is competition. I don't know how good, Zach Wilson really is. No knock on BYU because there's been some, there's been some good quarterbacks that come out of BYU, but the most notable is Steve Young. And we all know that Steve Young turned into a Super Bowl quarterback. They've had other guys. Who was it? I think Ty Detmer came from there. Now, if you're listening to this, you may not know who Ty Detmer is. He was he was a journeyman quarterback. He was an average guy. He had a good career for himself, so you can count that as a success. Trent Dilfer was a BYU guy. Most notably, he was the game. He was literally the poster boy for game manager quarterback with those Raven Lewis, good Lord, those Ray Lewis Raven defense-led teams that ultimately pushed through and got a Super Bowl title. Trent Dilfer was the quarterback. So, BYU's had a history of NFL quarterbacks. Now, is Zach Wilson closer to Steve Young? Or is he more, Detmer and Dilfer? Now, of course, he's not that level of talent, but maybe he falls more in the middle between that extreme and Steve Young. I do think for him, he needs to go to the right situation. Most prospects are that way, so I can't really make that comment like it's a knock on him or anything like that. But I think for him, he would definitely need to go to a team that may have maybe some untapped potential at wide receiver and tight end. Just that maybe the previous quarterback just didn't play well enough to make it work. So I do think Zach Wilson will be productive in the NFL. With him, I see a Kyler Murray type. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good comp for him. Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray is a guy who can dance around in the pocket, make throws on the run. If you aren't paying attention, he can take off, get yards. So I would say Zach Wilson is Kyler Murray. And I mean, if you guys listened to my NFL shows last season, then you know I'm a big Kyler Murray fan. So Zach Wilson, I am interested to see what he has when he gets to the NFL and faces better competition. For me, number 4, I would go Trey Lance from North Dakota State. I have him at 4 because there's like this great unknown about him. He hasn't played actually a lot of football. Last year, North Dakota State didn't play but one game, and in that one game, Lance struggled. But once again, he's more of the new age quarterback, and I think the NFL is leaning that way. Some teams are slowly going that way, while other teams are completely bought into the, ultra athletic quarterback with the good arm. And if all breaks down, then they can turn into the playmaker and make plays with their legs. Trey Lance can do that. Like I said, it's just going to be, he's going to need to get snaps to just get better accustomed to playing quarterback. And I think the story was coming out of high school, he was recruited for another position and ultimately wanted to play quarterback. So North Dakota State gave him that opportunity. And we all know North Dakota State's where Carson Wentz went. So I'm sure there's going to be some expectation of him hopefully coming in and catching that lightning in the bottle that Carson Wentz did when he first burst on the scene. Now, Wentz had some struggles past couple years in Philly, but now he's in Indianapolis looking for a new opportunity. And for Trey Lance, I think he needs to go to a team that we'll definitely have to be patient with him because, like I said, out of the 5, he's definitely played the least amount of football, I believe. So the optimism and the potential there may be a little greater, all because with the right coaching staff, maybe they can bring something out of him that maybe he hasn't even recognized yet. Looking at Trey Lance, I see who do I see Trey Lance being? For some reason, I want to say Dak Prescott with Trey Lance. Like I said, not really sure why, but Dak Prescott's a name that jumped into my head when first thinking about Trey Lance. So we'll go with that. And as we've seen with Dallas, Prescott's been a pretty good quarterback. Now Prescott is dealing with the injury he sustained last year, but we'll have to see how he comes back from that. But whoever drafts Lance, if you're getting a Dak Prescott type guy, you're doing pretty good for yourself. So I'd go with Lance at 4, and then I'll leave Mac Jones at number 5. I have him at 5 because Alabama quarterbacks, for some reason, just haven't really panned out in the majority in the NFL. They've had guys like Greg McElroy, AJ McCarron. Do they have like a John David? No, I think he was LSU, but they've had some other guys, and I just named AJ McCarron, Greg McElroy, just for first 2 that came in my head, and I'm sure a lot of you may be looking at me right now thinking, I don't know who that is. Are they still in the league? McElroy is not. He's a college football analyst now. A.J. McCarron, I believe, may be holding a clipboard somewhere in the NFL. But yeah, something about Alabama just hasn't produced great NFL quarterbacks, at least starting caliber quarterbacks. I mean, A.J. McCarron has he's carved out a nice little role for himself as a backup quarterback wherever he's gone. And I do think there is a kind of stigma against Alabama quarterbacks because when you go to Alabama, you're going to have literally 2-3 high-profile running backs, like at least 2 high-profile wide receivers, a high-profile tight end, high-profile offensive lineman. You got Nick Saban. So I think there's just some questions about how good these Alabama quarterbacks are. Now, Mac Jones seems like, from what you hear, he's a guy who he's definitely the least athletic out of the 5, but he may play the game more mentally than physically. So he may be one of the top in the 5 at reading defenses and, analyzing and being able to make throws that way, which ultimately led to a lot of comparisons of Tom Brady. But, me as a Patriot fan, I can't really go there because, that's some lofty praise. So I feel like if you do that, it's going to only set Mac Jones out for failure. So I guess just to play the game. I said I'm not going to use Brady. So let's just say Mac Jones is more. How about Mark Bulger? There's another name that some of you may not know who it is. He was a Rams quarterback, came in with a lot of praise. He's a guy who's going to stay in the pocket. Good arm, makes throws downfield. Mac Jones, I believe, ran like a 4.8 40. It's not blazing speed, but it's also not cement. So that means he can probably make a few plays with his legs, but definitely won't be his strong suit. Like I said, his is going to be, and hopefully this translates over in the NFL where he can still do some pre-snap reads and find success that way. So he's going to be your stereotypical pocket passer, whereas the other 4 have some scrambling ability. Trevor Lawrence is more of a, pocket guy who can run. So I guess I didn't give a comparison for Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be like a Josh Allen, all because they're kind of on the bigger side, so with some mobility. But there you are. That's the quarterbacks to me. Those are the 5. That's not to say that with the way the NFL is going and how some people may panic at the bottom of the first round, you may see a team jump back in at the end of the first round to get another quarterback. Which, if that does happen, I would think it would be Kellen Mond. So I'll just throw him in on this episode. But I'll talk more about him when I talk about rounds 2 and 3. That's where I think he'll more likely go. But I could see Kellen Mond jumping in at the end of the first round. A team going up for him. But yeah. So after talking about the quarterbacks, obviously I look at the skill position guys after that. And wide receiver, seems like there's a big 3 when it comes to wide receiver. You have Jamar Chase from LSU, and then the 2 Alabama guys, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. Same thing as I did with the quarterbacks. Look at the wide receivers. Now, I would say going into the last year, I thought Jalen Waddle was the best guy out of the 3, but he didn't get to finish his season last year as he suffered a ankle injury. I want to say it was a broken ankle. I believe it was a game against Tennessee, and it wasn't even on offense per se. I believe he was fielding a punt and hurt his ankle. I mean, that is something that he brings to the table, is that special teams ability as well as wide receiver. And I think once he went down with the injury, it became Ja'Marr Chase as the number one guy. But then, of course, Devontae Smith turned around and won the Heisman. First Heisman to do it since Desmond Howard, I want to say. So I guess any of you sports trivia people, there's one to keep in the back of your mind. But yeah, so I think that group of three are probably the three wide receiver names you'll hear first. Not to say they're the only three in the first round, but I mean, those are the things that everybody's going to be looking at. Now, as I said, I do think at this point, Ja'Marr Chase is the first guy you'll hear from. And, you know, him being at LSU, I'm trying to see, who would I compare him to? Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, yeah, being at LSU, you want to, I guess, compare him to another LSU guy, but then that means that I have to put him up there with Odell Beckham. He's probably the higher profile guy from LSU. I guess one thing I'm wondering about Ja'Marr Chase is he a small wide receiver? I know Devontae Smith is like 6 feet, so that's a good size for a wide receiver. But yeah, so he'll be the first guy you hear from, like I said, and he'll probably go in the top 10, maybe top 5, depending on if there's any trades up there and what teams stay up there. Because like I said, top of the draft, I mean, anything can happen. But I think Ja'Marr Chase will be, let's go Amari Cooper. And if you've seen any Cowboys games, which I'm sure you have because they're on all the time, but Amari Cooper's a guy who, I mean, he's just steady production. Comparing an LSU Tiger to an Alabama guy might be a little dangerous with the rivalry there, but yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Only thing against Ja'Marr Chase is he, like Trey Lance, didn't play a lot last year. I actually believe he opted out with the whole pandemic and everything. So there's going to be maybe some questions of, is he going to be a little rusty once he gets back out in the field for the first time in over a year? We'll have to see, but I wouldn't really worry about that because the talent's there clearly. And once again, depending on the situation he gets into, may set up how quickly he can hit the ground and just start running with it. And of course, you have to wait for when I do my first round mock draft to see where I have him going and all that. So, but yeah, I'm gonna go Amari Cooper, and I don't think he's that big of a guy, but he does have great speed, so that should be able to minimize some of that. I know he was a big playmaker for LSU. A lot of his completions were, over the middle, going for long gains, deep down the field, going up and making a play. He found his way into the end zone a lot, so that's definitely a good thing. And that just means he has number one receiver ability in the NFL, which only strengthens your draft case. So, yeah, I'm going to go Ja'Marr Chase as an Amari Cooper prototype, being the first wide receiver off the board. Second guy, now it comes down to Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. I mean, Smith won the Heisman, so you would actually think Smith would be the number one guy. But like I said, Chase didn't play. Waddle got hurt, so I'm going to Waddle too. Like I said, before Waddle got hurt, I thought he was the best wide receiver in college football. And I think from all reports or whatever, he's supposed to recover from the injury. He probably has recovered by this point, but just saying that I haven't really heard of there being complications or anything like that. And I think ultimately he could end up being the best wide receiver from this draft. But the injury, like I said, of course, is playing into him not being the first one off the board. So I would go Waddle number 2. And the funny thing is, when I was hearing draft profile and all this kind of stuff on him, I honestly did not realize he was only 5'10". When I watched Alabama games, I could have sworn that he was a 6-foot wide receiver, at least. I don't know, it's maybe because lining up alongside Devontae Smith just made him look that much bigger. I don't know. But hearing that he was only 5'10" really surprised me. And I'm expecting him to have that speed, like no diminishing speed from the ankle injury. I mean, he's a young guy, so should bounce back from it. I know there was a lot of comparisons to Tyreek Hill. But for me, he's an interesting one because his special teams ability, automatically think Devin Hester. Problem was Devin Hester he wasn't as successful as a wide receiver as he was as a kick returner. So I think Jalen Waddle will be able to do both of them better. He may not be as good as Hester was kick returning or punt returning. We know Hester was probably the best in the last... How long has Hester been out of the league? I guess the last 15 years? And... So yeah, I'm going to go with, I guess, a mix between Hester and... I guess Tyreek Hill. We'll go with Tyreek Hill. I do see the comparison because Tyreek Hill's the type where, you just want to get the ball in his hand as quick as you can and then just watch him play make with the ball. Waddle's the same way. He was the guy at Alabama who caught a lot of, screen passes or slants, all that kind of stuff, kind of quick routes, and then did a lot of the work after the play. Not to say that he couldn't, that he does that. Well, that he didn't, line up on the outside, beat the corner downfield, catch it over the top. He did that as well. But I think his biggest asset is quick, short time routes, ball to him, and then just watch him do his magic. So I'm going to go Tyreek Hill as an open field receiver, but with Devin Hester as a return type guy. And then, weirdly enough, I have Devontae Smith at number 3, the Heisman Trophy winner. And I guess I have him at 3 only because his size for some reason worries me, although we have seen slighter guys be productive. But I think Devontae Smith, I think he's like 5'9" or something. And I know his weight was like a big news story or whatever. I think he weighed in at like 160 or something. I mean, that just sounds like, I don't know. I would wonder like how many hits he'd be able to take with that frame before he kind of, starts to feel it and maybe fold up or something. I don't know. But when I was watching Devontae Smith, I guess a couple of names kind of popped in my head. I did think a little Antonio Brown. I've seen some people comparing to Marvin Harrison. And I gotta say, remembering Marvin Harrison, I don't see that. Don't know why. I mean, if people are comparing them, then maybe it's something I should see, but I don't see that. I gotta feel like it's more Antonio Brown. And as we've seen Antonio Brown in his many stops between Pittsburgh, New England, Tampa Bay, Oakland, one thing you know about Antonio Brown is he's a guy you can line up slot outside. You can do quick hitters with him. If you had a quarterback like Big Ben who liked to extend plays, Brown was the guy who could find seams in the coverage, make tough catches, and was pretty good with the ball in his hands after the catch. Those are all things I could see Devontae Smith doing. I wonder with his height and frame, will teams more willingly put him in the slot? Not saying you can't do that because he can't operate out of the slot. He did that with Alabama a lot. But maybe that's why I have him at 3, because ultimately your outside guys seem to get more shine than slot receivers. So, yeah. So recap real quick. Chase is the best. Waddle second. Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, number 3. Then, I guess the last part of the offensive preview for round 1, the running back position. Will a running back get drafted in the first round? And like I said, it's something that doesn't happen every year because of the position being looked at as one where you can pick up, quality running backs in the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round. You can pick up guys, undrafted guys who can have great years. So because of that, a lot of teams stay away from it in the 1st round. And plus, with running backs having a life expectancy of 3-4 years, the top end. I mean, for every Frank Gore who played until he was 40 somehow, you can have a Trent Richardson who just doesn't pan out. So for me, I don't think a running back's going to get drafted in the 1st round. If it were to happen, there's only 2 names that should be called, and one is Najee Harris out of Alabama, who, I like watching him run. He reminds me of probably go Derrick Henry for another Alabama guy. Yeah, Najee Harris reminds me of a good Lord, Derrick Henry type in in that, he can do damage between the tackles. But, if it's clogged up in the middle, he's got the ability to bounce it outside. He can run over guys. Everything Derrick Henry does. So I wouldn't worry about Najee Harris if he got drafted. He seems like a guy who would be able to produce from day one. But the other guy who I might see as more dynamic, Travis Etienne from Clemson. He was an exciting player. I mean, he did it all for Clemson. He'd line up in the backfield. He'd line up out wide. He'd line up in the slot. So he's, I guess, more of your Le'Veon Bell type. And that's completely up to team philosophy, which running back you want. Harris is a guy who maybe for the first couple of years may be first, second down back. Might get some opportunities on third down. But Etienne is a guy who can play all three downs, no problem. So can't go wrong with either one. I just think with the stigma on running backs, don't think either one gets drafted in the first round. But I do think they are guys who very top of the second round will hear their names called. So we can probably push them off until when that episode comes. But yeah, no running backs. But would not be surprised if one or both of them got drafted in the first round. If they do, you can probably expect it second, probably like the last third of the first round. So from like 22 to the end, that's probably where you'll hear one of their names, if not both. But if they don't get in, like I said, I would expect very early in the second round, because at that point, that's where the value is really there. There is some upside to taking a running back in the first round. If you do that, you get them for 5 years under contract. A lot of times, if you get 5 good years out of running back, I mean, you've got plenty. So, I mean, at that point, you're pretty much ready to get a new guy in there anyway. And that running back's out there in free agency looking for a second contract. So, but yeah, I think that's a good spot to end this episode. So hopefully you learned something. Like I said, I didn't get into offensive linemen. I mean, I could do it real quickly. There's like 2 at the top of the draft. Everybody's talking about Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater. I've seen Sewell play more. He was at Oregon. Slater is at Northwestern. They are your prototypical left tackle. As your left tackle's protecting the blind side of your quarterback, usually the tackle you want to be more athletic than the right tackle. These are both guys who can block a D end, get to the second level, put a hat on like a linebacker, create room for a running back, or if they try to blitz a linebacker, have good enough feet to engage the linebacker, keep him away from the quarterback. So it can't go wrong either way, but I would expect one of them to probably go to like Cincinnati at the top of the draft, with Cincinnati's picking like 5 or 6 or something. Since Joe Burrow's coming off an injury, you would want to help the offensive line keep him upright. In terms of the other one, offensive lineman is tricky, but I wouldn't be shocked if the two of them would probably be gone within the first 15 picks, I think. But yeah, those are the 2 big name offensive linemen. There's also Was it Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a guy in the first round as well. But I don't know too much about him. Like Sewell's the one I've seen. Slater, I've heard a lot about since the draft process kind of got started. So that's where I would go. Sewell 1, Slater 2, those two being close, and Tucker, I don't want to say distant third, but a clear third. So there you are. That's the offensive side of the ball. First round. Hopefully brought up a name that, from hearing maybe my quick little comparison for them and all that kind of stuff, maybe it's got you excited that your team gets one of these guys. But like I said, next episode, we're going to take a look at the defensive players for round 1. And we'll be another day closer to the draft, which is, like, again, round 1, Thursday, 2 and 3, Friday, 4, 5, 6, 7, Saturday. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Once again, shout out to my Castbox people. This is the first episode you've heard. Appreciate it. All the previous episodes should be up there on Castbox for you, so you get a chance, you can definitely go back and listen to some of those. But yeah. And as I said in the last episode, which was a couple of days ago, I know we went through a little stretch there where you hadn't heard from me for a couple of weeks, but I said it's draft week and I am here for it. So I will be giving you stuff every day from here until probably by Sunday. I'll be ready to wrap up draft stuff. So definitely stay tuned for that. Should be a good week. And hope y'all have had a good start to your week. But thanks again for tuning in. If you would hit follow or subscribe wherever you are listening to the podcast. And not to single out just the Castbox people. Appreciate you if you're on YouTube or Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're out there. So appreciate you. But you can go ahead and go over to Twitter at Choppin' Podcast. Follow the show there. You can interact with me over there. Have been getting more active on Twitter, so give you a reason to go over there and follow me, especially during the draft. I mean, I will be on Twitter a lot. So thanks again, all of you. And we're on our way to 100 episodes. Should be a big deal for me. But hope you're having a good one. Whenever you listen to this, whether it's morning, afternoon, night. Hope you're having a good time. Be safe out there. God bless, of course. And I will catch you in the next episode. All right.